Now, the next question is, what's needed to grow the Esdm? In terms of government policies, there have been a lot of good announcements, and we've seen these different announcements in the last few months, weeks. In terms of expectations from the government, we still need a few things to happen. Tax, duty structures, incentives for local manufacturing, proactive infrastructure development, and then the branding of India-made products, that promotion of branding. Labor reforms, there's still a lot of room for modifying the labor. As one of the speakers this morning said, some of the laws are from the 1920s that have to be reformed. Incentives for skill development and standards. This is the last bullet is extremely important. Allowing indiscriminate imports hurts the local industry. So the substandard, unsafe electronic products should not be allowed to come into the country, and that standards of quality have to be maintained. What's the role of industries? What do we have to do as industry? We have to focus on quality and robust manufacturing processes. We cannot compromise on those aspects. We have to reduce cycle time for NPI or new product introductions, extremely cost conscious, and deliver on timely, precise, and quality attributes. We should work with our local supply chain to enhance their competitiveness. They are our partners. We've got to help the customers to change the AVL that they may have into a local Indian supply base. And then we have to be socially responsible to support education, infrastructure, technology, and the environment. So the last item that I want to cover, and I don't know how we are doing on time, but this to me is actually the most important, which is creating an Indian ODM industry. To me, this is a must. And I want to propose a very simple, at this level, very simple 7-step approach for ODM. So let me talk about ODM a little bit more. What is ODM? What are those ODM products? So if you look at the last 20 years, in terms of computing, we've seen all kinds of line cards, laptops, tablets, servers today, peripherals, displays. On the consumer front, you got smartphones, handsets, cameras, point-of-sale terminals, set-top boxes. Communications, you have various switching products for the LAN, for Wi-Fi, access, appliances, storage. And then from a component perspective, there are suppliers who specialize in certain kinds of memory, or certain kinds of cabling and power supplies. This is all part of this ODM. And to me, this is the most striking data. If you're not aware of this, then this is why I included this slide. If you look at the top 10 ODMs in the world, and look at the country that's involved, it's pretty much Taiwan across all the way, right? There is no competition for Taiwan when it comes to ODM. So, to me, this is fundamental for the growth of Esdm in India. We have to be able to create an ODM industry which exploits the design skills, and there are tremendous design skills, whether you look at the Wipros or the TCSs who are doing, for the big OEMs, or small design companies, IP companies, tremendous design skills. The design teams in India worked on all the products I just talked about. You got to take that design skill, you got to marry it with the supply chain and the manufacturing infrastructure to be able to offer this ODM industry and focus on the Indian market and then take it global. And I believe it can be done. So, step 1, learn from Taiwan's success. So the goal is to build a domestic ODM industry, become self-reliant and self-sufficient, and I would say set a goal of 10 years. Could be done faster than that. First thing is study Taiwan's 30-year success in growing ODM. What are the takeaways? What are the lessons? And I think this should be an activity for the business schools, for the industry trade groups and government agencies. Collaborate and get a really good understanding of what made Taiwan successful, that industry for the ODM. Second, identify the product and technology areas that are critical for India's consumption needs. And I think there's a report from Iesa that has identified certain products. But I think the key thing is that India's domestic products needs are not the same as the rest of the world. I think the companies here have to look inward in terms of cost, function, geographic needs, cultural needs, and usage trends, most important usage trends. Many of you may have heard about Procter & Gamble's the razor story, right? How they had to redesign the shaving handheld razor for the Indian market and the impact on their business. Third, define a 10-year roadmap for establishing this world-class ODM industry. And what that means is it includes collaboration, resource application, market relevance, and then staying the course on that 10-year roadmap to get to the goals and review the roadmap on an annual basis. I think one of the risks that happens is duplication of efforts when there are many, many groups trying to do all this. Coordination is extremely important. Fourth, put in place a very clear, simple set of incentives for aggressively encouraging the sector. You got to look at apply the lessons from the past incentive programs and policies. But the key is it's non-bureaucratic, it's simple, easy to understand, single window type approvals and implementation. The motivation here is you want to create a new industry with measurable results and have rewards, business rewards for the ODM stakeholders. No one's going to do this for charity. They have to be successful in business. So the incentives have to be aligned. Fifth, maybe bring in some selective partners from the global ODMs who wish to really genuinely commit to the Indian interest here, not just take it outside. So that's important. I think long-term commitment is a prerequisite, and they must get financial gains, and there is plenty of large industrial houses in India who have the financial muscle to make something like this happen. Sixth, ecosystem. The ODM ecosystem is very, very important. It's not just about having a fab or having some design houses. It's much more beyond that. This has to be a large-scale, well-planned skills and infrastructure ecosystem. And what I mean by ecosystem is it covers everything from IC devices to materials, substrates, PCBs, packaging, assembly, test, automation of the equipment, spares, maintenance. All of these pieces have to be looked at. I think we can spend a lot of money on some major investments, but if the rest of the ecosystem is not there, it's just not going to work. And then finally, I think it's important to create what I call as ODM campuses across the country, maybe 6 or 8 different ODM campuses. And each one is going to have a distinct specialty. They're not going to duplicate each other. They've got to complement. They've got to take best practices. Avoid the dilution of efforts across these campuses. And then select the locations based purely on technical and business reasons, nothing to do with politics. So this whole drive has to be a merit-driven, industry-driven, business-driven, objective focus to create this healthy industrial climate. So those, in simple terms, are the 7-step process that I want to go through. And when we talk about ecosystem, this is my last slide, by the way, so I'll wrap up here. When we talk about an ecosystem, I think those of us who have worked on both sides of the industry, I came from the semiconductor side, I've been on the system side, design side, we have seen that whole life span. There's so many aspects of the ecosystem you got to look at. You got on the left side the engineering side, the right side the manufacturing side, design, development, all the different aspects of design, design for manufacturability, which again to me is something that India can be taking an advantage. We've got to create designers who understand manufacturing and the cost of the design that they create. Value engineering, prototyping, validation, reliability, sustaining, environmental aspects. And on the manufacturing side, all the aspects that cover things, everything from shop floor IT systems to logistics and repair. With that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kamath. So I think Dr. Kamath made few important points. First, he gave us an important data point that electronics, hardware manufacturing industry is worth $1 trillion in the world. That's really a large size of the industry. 750 million from OEMs and 250 million from contract manufacturing and 150 billion from ODM. I'm sorry, it is not million, it's billion. So even if you look at the EMS, 250 billion and ODM, which is 150 billion, and if India, tries to get 5 or 10% of the share, I think it's fairly large opportunity for us as a country. And secondly, he talked about the ODM industry where Taiwan has virtually no competition today. And since Indian companies and global companies in India have a lot of design capability in terms of silicon, board, system, software and testing, there's no reason why there can be ODMs emerging out of India. So that was great.